Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, yada, yada, yada. Holly, Stephen King, episode 16, yada, yada, yada. Um, we're a little. I'm broken by this point in the series. There's no real reason to keep reading, but I have promised this. So this episode will have three sections: a "So What Happened" portion, which is very short this week because, well, 15 pages and we don't do anything. A lit crit portion, which has the most stunning little bit of condensed Stephen King, probably racism, or at least stereotyping that I mean, wow. It's awful. Like, this is embarrassing. I was embarrassed to read it. I read this in public. I had to shut the book. I I didn't know what to do. So this bit, we'll get there. You'll know what I'm talking about when we get there. I had a roommate one time, and he was hosting something of a party. There were a bunch of people over, and he had left his phone out. He left his phone for an extended period of time. I have no idea. I have no idea how I knew his password, or maybe I guessed it. Anyway, I opened his phone up, and I'm not the worst guy in the world, okay? Not the worst guy in the world. A little bit, I'm a prick. And I was going through his pictures, and it turned out he was a foot guy. Okay, whatever. I don't understand it. Not for me to understand, not for me to judge. Don't care. Took the picture. We lived with his girlfriend too, by the way. And I made that picture his background on his phone. Funny, haha, right? Kind of a prickish thing to do. I get it. Okay, I was younger then. Wouldn't do it today, probably. And he found his phone late because I didn't keep the phone, right? Don't keep it by you. He's drunk. He's not going to remember where he left it. So I put it somewhere he might have left it. He finds his phone, opens it up, very red, very fast. Embarrassed and we're in our apartment, but it was as if we were in public. One of these, right? Who has seen this thing? I read this line in this book in a Starbucks and had that fear. I'm in public right now. Is anyone seeing this? Anyway, and then finally the writer's corner portion of this video. So what happened? Bonnie wakes up in the Harris's basement. Kind of that's it for the first chapter of this thing. 15 pages of reading and nothing really goes on. And the next chapter is a potpourri of different characters, but we have Barbara doing a favor for her brother, and she finds the dot plot that he has set up about the abductions, right, where they're taking place. And just so the dots it has on it are Bonnie, Ellen, and Pete. She decides she's going to add Jorge, and this is a quote, feel silly. Why would that make you feel silly? Okay. And then Holly goes to talk to Roddy and ends up leaving because she thinks the place is probably crawling with COVID. So, what do we have here? On 291, we have Common Core Stephen. This is when Bonnie wakes up in the basement of the Harris's house, as kind of getting her bearings about her. There's a keypad. She can see it by leaning the side of her face against the bars. But there's a plastic cover over it, and she can't get it off or even loosen it. If she could, happening on the right combination would be like getting all the Powerball numbers. No, it wouldn't, Stephen, you twit. That's not how numbers work. No, it wouldn't, Stephen. especially considering that most of these types of combinations are 4 digits long. 4 single digits. You think that is the... I don't even know how many... Powerball's like 8 numbers, right? 8 possibly double-digit numbers is the same probability as more than likely 4 digits? Steven? No, it isn't. No. And so here's the thing. Okay, he's a writer, right? He's giving us just sort of play with words, right? What he's doing here is he's giving us a metaphor. No. If you're giving us a metaphor, you don't give us a metaphor that is numbers being a metaphor for numbers. You don't say that writing 60,000 words would be almost as hard as writing a novel. No. You don't say writing a poem is almost as hard as writing an encyclopedia. What are you talking about? Anyway, that is the first of much anger that I will have here. The second part on 295 here. So we have now seen Holly approach the young woman that was at the summer camp or something like that. I can't remember exactly where they were. She has approached... first off, why did we even have the sidebar with Jerome where he interviewed one person one time? Like that's weird, unless I'm forgetting something, which is possible. But Holly interviewed that woman at the summer camp, the woman at the bowling alley. She was there for the interview with the teenagers. That's 3. She interviewed 2 of the older men that were in the Golden Oldies. That's 5, right? 5 people at least. And this is just top of my head. I didn't write this in the notes. Didn't remember to look back and get a count on it. At least 5 people so far. And maybe I'm misremembering, but I'm 90% positive that she approached all of those other people with the truth, right? I am looking for XYZ. Now, a little bit they were different because we're not looking for Bonnie. Oh no, so there were way more people that she has interviewed because she was looking for Bonnie at the beginning. Every time, I believe, she approached these people and said, hey, I'm looking for this Carrie guy. Don't know what's going on. It's maybe in relation to another thing. Is that not how those interviews went? For some reason, with either the last person or the penultimate person, I can't remember if there were one other person she wants to interview besides Roddy, she goes in swinging. Oh, there was stolen cars. I can't say that I am saying that Carrie has done it, but someone was stealing cars and I need to get to the bottom of this. Now she wants to lie about things all of a sudden? What? Why? Where does this come from? From where does this impetus spring that suddenly Holly decides, yeah, I don't need to tell this guy exactly what's going on. Probably we're not going to be truthful with this individual. The other people, yeah, that was all. We got that out there on the table. This guy, I don't know about yet. Where does this come from? From where is the impetus to suddenly start lying? I don't know. It doesn't seem to be there. It doesn't seem to be clear. Just all of a sudden, there it is. And now, we're here for the cake on it. Page 299. This is as Barbara is going to Jerome's old room because she is retrieving some files to email him. He has requested the pictures off of his thumb drive. The orange flash drive is where Jerome said it would be. She turns on the computer, types in Jerome's password, pound shizzle pound. Really, Stephen? Really? The black guy in your novel happens to have shizzle as a password? Stephen, really? I This embarrassed me in public. I was terrified that someone had looked over my shoulder and seen me reading this. How embarrassing that is. How miserable, how terrible, how stupid. Really? Now, you see how dumbfounded I still am. When I first read this, after I got over the shock and awe, after the rosiness had fled from my cheeks from public embarrassment, after all of that, I tried real hard. 10, 15, 20 minutes. I tried to think of something that would be just the dagger in the heart here. Because I talked about Stephen King being oddly racist a lot of times, like being one of these things where I know exactly how these people think, right? These people are different than us white folk, and I know them. I did a lot of that in this series, right? I tried real hard to figure out something that would be just a little more dagger in the heart there. And honestly, guys, at the end of it, it felt like bullying. It felt like, Adrian, you don't have to do this. That's just mean. Stephen King is obviously out of touch. Stephen King is obviously some level of brain dead. There's no way. There is no way that felt like a good idea to him. Shizzle. No. No. At no point should that have made sense. At no point should pound, shizzle, pound have struck anyone as a suitable password to put on the page, to actually write in a novel. This is not parody. This is not to make someone laugh. This is what Stephen King thinks, I guess, black people would use as a password. Something as stereotypical as that. Not even just stereotypical. I haven't had a television since 2006 at the latest. 2006, okay? I remember television shows where shizzle was talked about in this sort of joking fashion, like, isn't this edgy new age vocabulary? That's 20 years ago. What is going on here? You cannot be serious. This is mind-numbing level of bad. Anyway, I gotta move on because that's just it. This is the man who is using the Barbara character to bludgeon us with what the black experience must be. The black experience, according to Stephen King, is hashtag shizzle hashtag. Page 290. We are waking up as Bonnie in the basement of the Harrises. Bonnie sits up and massages her temples, trying to ease the headache. Something falls to the futon she woke up on. It's one of her earrings. The other appears to be gone, probably knocked off or pulled off in the struggle. And there was a struggle. It's hazy, but she remembers lurching along the front of a deserted building, trying to hold on to consciousness long enough to get away. But Rodney grabbed her and pulled her back. Not a terrible recap. You only need one, though. Like, don't get me wrong, that's 100 words, 50 words. It's not a terrible amount of rereading for your reader. But imagine, so you only need it once, right? You don't need to retell us. At which point would this have been more dynamic? I contend, since we already have a couple of abduction scenes with the Harrises, we have Jorge being abducted, we have someone else being abducted, I can't remember exactly who, but we have what they do. We know what they do. We've been shown that part. Instead of having given us Bonnie's abduction from their point of view, would it not have been, because I think there's something like this with the Jorge chapter too, isn't there? Where it's kind of retold to us. I believe it is. I believe I gave it a pass because it was like, okay, well, top of the novel there. We'll see where this goes. But would it not have been more dynamic for the reader for Bonnie to be sitting there in this cell, since we already know we already know the way that the Harrises abduct people. We know their MO. Would it not have been more dynamic for Bonnie to wake up and have flashbacks? Just boof, boof, little things here and there. Not the whole scene. Little things. And then all of a sudden, Roddy comes down and he's got a bruise on his face. Then we get a little bit more dynamism from that. We have to infer as the reader. We would actually get to feel Bonnie's excitement in having hit, knowing that she would have hit Roddy in the face. We would feel that with the character. Instead of here, it's just recap, right? It's not the worst writing in the world. It's not the most terrible thing you can do to a reader. But here's where it's interesting in the scope of this series. Classic Stephen King understood that. Classic Stephen King could build dynamic scenes. We talk about Stephen King, we talk about It, we talk about The Shining. And when we talk about scenes from those, oftentimes we're describing the things that happened in the movie because they're more readily available to our mind, because we are taking them in through all senses and perceptions. Sight, sound, emotional, all of those things being there. But many of those scenes are stripped straight from Stephen King novels. Stephen King was a powerful writer. Maybe not the most difficult subject matter, right? I mean, we're not talking The Old Man and the Sea with a guy struggling against himself and time and nature. We're not talking about The Great Gatsby, where what does it mean to be a man? And once we get that idea of what it means to be a man, how do we become the great man? And once we've become the great man, is it obvious to everyone around us how sad we really are? His novels were not that, for sure. fine. But he was a powerful storyteller. Maybe I should have said storyteller, not writer. But regardless, old classic Stephen King understood the dynamism that would be allowed to him through describing that scene strictly through the flashbacks of Bonnie sitting there or laying there on the cell floor. And the last note that I have for today is on 300. This is Barbara as she is examining the map that Jerome has printed out, which has all of the abductions on it. But with Castro added to Jerome's map, she sees something interesting and a tiny bit disturbing. The dots almost seem to circle the park. It's true that Bonnie came a bit sooner than the others, summer instead of fall. But didn't Barbara see somewhere, maybe on that Netflix show Mindhunter, that homicidal maniacs have a tendency to wait a shorter and shorter time between their kills? Like drug addicts shooting up at ever more frequent intervals. Why are you throwing Netflix and Mindhunters in there? You don't have to do that. This is schlock begetting schlock. This is trash making trash. It's funny. You look at some of these classic works, right? Shakespeare includes references to Greek tragedies, and Faulkner includes references to Shakespeare, all of these things that reference each other. And, movies will make movie references and books make literary references. Nobody references television because television is the theater of the mindless. That's an old quote. Radio is the theater of the mind. Television is the theater of the mindless. Something like that, something very close to that. I can't remember who said it. And that's true. Television is for stupid people. I'm telling you. Television, you should not be watching television. Probably you are. A lot of people do. I'm not saying I'm better than anyone for not having a television, but I refuse to waste that time in that manner. Stephen King is here telling you, not only should we have Netflix and be wasting our time in that fashion, it's good enough to put it in literature, baby. This is Stephen King. That's all I have for this one. It's okay if you have a TV. I'm just mad.